Why does sound tech say check 1, 2? Because if you say 3, somebody's gonna lift something. Hey, let's have your best sound check ever. Hey, if you're new here, go ahead and hit subscribe and ding the little bell to get notified every time I post a new video, because I'm here to help you make worship sound great at your church. Today, I'm gonna give you my tips for the best sound check ever, and that starts with preparation. You might be familiar with the saying that says everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time, but that's not true. If you're prepared, you can put on your pants with both legs at the same time. Before you even arrive at church, you should know who's coming and what instrument they're playing. If there's gonna be a tuba quartet, you probably need to know that ahead of time. The other thing to know is what kind of input they need. Does their violin have a DI or a mic? Or is the electric guitarist playing through a pod or a fractal, so they'll need a DI or just a straight XLR input? Or are they bringing an amp so that you need a microphone and maybe even a cable extender so that you can get it off stage and keep your stage quiet? And all this stuff requires good communication. So if you want some more tips on that, I have a free guide for you called How to Lead Your Church Sound Team. I'll drop the link down in the description below. The next thing you need to do after you know who's coming is doing a line check. This just makes sure that the lines are clean from the stage all the way to the console. So if there's any noise or if there's any static or something's just not working, you know it before musicians arrive. This used to require 2 people, but now with iPads, you can check a mic on stage and see if you're getting signal at the console and even turn it up and unmute it if you want to listen for any noise or hiss. One thing I like to do is to grab an SM57 or another really reliable mic that I know that works, and I test the mic line that way. If you have a really reliable input source, you'll be able to tell what other stuff in the line isn't working. Now, after the musicians arrive, you need to be on stage helping them set up, and there's a few reasons for this. You're on the worship team. You actually have to interface with the band, and their playing affects your mix, and your mix affects their playing if you're mixing their monitors. So it's really important to have a relational connect point when they first arrive and start getting set up. By being helpful right off the bat, when you need something in the middle of sound check, or something's sounding off, or somebody's being lazy with their playing, you offer a little bit of correction and say, hey, can you help this out a little bit? They're gonna be a whole lot more willing to help you and work for you, and you don't sound like Oscar the Grouch back in the sound booth. Now, I get it, there's a lot to do in the sound booth, especially after they arrive, but you've got time to figure all that out, and if you are out of time, that just means you didn't prepare enough, so go back to step 1. Now, if you've got a new band or you're not set up well in the first place, you might need to do what I call a clinical sound check. This is where you have each player play their instrument one at a time so that you can make sure that it's gained up, that there's not any noise or weird stuff coming from their instrument, and you can get everything worked out ahead of time. This keeps you from glossing something over or having the gain set way too low or way too high when you first start your mix. You can also set some EQ and dynamics here, but I actually like to EQ stuff in context of everything else, but we'll talk about that in another video. Now, your goal is to get the player to play just as loud as they would when they're playing with everyone else, but actually, this rarely happens. They're usually a little bit more timid when they're playing or singing by themselves, so it can be helpful to leave a little bit more headroom or distance between your normal operating level and where it clips. If you're getting monitor wedges set at the same time, make sure everybody can hear what they need to as each instrument plays. They'll get their monitor dialed more in later, but at least make sure that they can hear it a little bit at this point. Now, you're also checking their instrument for noises and buzzes, because you want to work all this out ahead of time so that you're not fussing with it right before service starts. That's always stressful, and then you don't smell very good. And pro tip, it's always helpful to have some spare batteries and instrument cables ready to go just in case they need it. Now, if you have a pretty consistent setup from week to week, you can start with the jam. This is where the band just starts playing a couple simple chords so that they can get their monitors set if they're mixing their own in-ear monitors, and you can get a good level on everybody pretty quickly. The other thing you can do is play a chorus to a song that everybody knows well. The chorus is usually the louder part, so you'll usually get a pretty good signal from them, and it has to be something that they can play without having to think too much about it. Oh, what's that? My t-shirt? Yeah, you can find them down in the link in the description below. Now, if you have one set of preamps for monitors and front of house, you'll need to make sure that you get the gain set quickly. This is your first priority because everyone else's monitor mix, or even the broadcast mix too, depends on this preamp level. If your stuff's set too low, they'll have to crank up their level all the way on their in-ear monitor mixer, and they're not going to have all the control that they need. Or if it's too hot, they'll either have it way down low, and like one click is too quiet and another click is too loud, or you'll just end up with noise and your fader's going to be all the way at 10 and you won't have enough. The better the musician's monitor mix, the better your mix is going to be, because when they can hear themselves well and feel confident in their playing, it's a whole lot easier to mix, and they're going to be playing off one another as well, so they won't play things that clash. And it takes everybody on the worship team playing, singing, and mixing together to create an enjoyable, emotional worship environment. Now, if this is making sense so far, type the jam down in the comments below. Now here's another pro tip. Use Virtual Soundcheck to help your band mix their own monitors. You can record the band onto a digital audio workstation or the built-in recorder on your console. Record a song and then play it back so that they can get their monitor mixers dialed in while they're not playing their instrument. This also gives you the opportunity to go up on stage and help them mix their monitors well. You would be surprised at how poorly some of them are mixing their monitor mixes. And doing it over and over again the wrong way isn't going to make them any better. Try it and let me know how it goes down in the comments below. Now I want to talk to you about a shift that you have to make in the middle of sound check. It's called technical mixing versus musical mixing. In the beginning, you've got to make sure that everything's hooked up and working, that your gain is set right, and you're roughing in your EQ, your compression, and your effects. But there comes a point when you need to stop fiddling with the EQ on the toms, and you need to start looking at what the dynamics are of the song, or who's leading what song when, and if there's an instrumental section, when to push up that, and what instrument to highlight. You also need to pay attention to the dynamics of the worship set. What's the loudest part of the worship set, and what's the quietest part? If you know the loudest part of the worship set, you can set that so that that's at your maximum SPL. And if you don't have an SPL meter, these are really handy too. Especially if you're sound checking for a long time, or if you've got several services in the same day, your ears can get fatigued. So using the SPL meter can be a whole lot easier than guessing how loud it is exactly. Now, I also like to have a set list written out so that I can make notes as I'm mixing. I don't love to have this on my phone because I just get distracted. You also might have a fun time writing up the musical delay on certain parts of the song or highlighting certain lines. It's a whole lot of fun. Even if you're brand new at mixing, you don't even know what EQ does, and the compressor is just something that Ray bypasses on the Millennium Falcon, you can get a whole lot of mileage out of your mix just by paying attention to the music and highlighting certain instruments at certain times. Oh, and it's also really handy to know who's leading what song when, so that you have their vocal mic up at the very beginning, not at the second line of the song. So if you like these tips but want a little bit of help remembering them, I already made a checklist for you so you can print it out and bring it with you to your next sound check. There's a link down in the description below. Don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe and ding the little bell, turn the notifications on to all, and we'll see you back here next time on Attaway Audio. Remember, it's all about the low end, avoid the sound tech solo, and nobody leaves church humming the kick drum. We'll see you next time.